From the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, this is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast. Coming up on the program,
even though it's beginning of summer, we're going to talk about a second planting for our summer crops and a planting for fall.
Are your questions our answers? Mike Novak with his environmental report, The Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. He says some nice things about us, too.
And then we also have blogger and author Dee Nash from the great state of Oklahoma. All that and more coming up today on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is permeating into your ears with your host, Joey Bear.
And it could be the weeds. Some gardeners try to get all the weeds out of their garden. Other gardeners leave them in their garden. It's really a decision that you need to make. There's benefits to both sides of that. It's just something that you need to figure out what you want to do for your garden.
And Holly Bear.
Canning is a science. When you're canning, you want to make sure you follow the directions, follow the recipe, don't cut corners, don't replace things. It's crucial to you, your health, and your family.
They're professional gardeners with full-time jobs, and they're on the air now.
Welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast. I'm Joy Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
Behind the TWVG microphone here in the WI Garden Media Studios in southeast Wisconsin. The information you're going to hear is important and vital to the life and well-being of your garden. You just may have to tweak some of the dates and times you applied for your particular growing area. If you're tuning in for the very first time, we welcome you. If you've tuned in for all the episodes we've produced, thank you. And you can check out all previous episodes with the guest and the content of those episodes on our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, underneath the podcast tab at the top of the page. There you can also find the sponsors, the great sponsors that help support this program. If you're tuning in for the very first time, you've stumbled upon us, you've seen a topic that interests you, you're interested in the guests we have, and you're not really sure who we are or what we do, well, Holly's going to tell you a little bit about that. Then we're going to get into planting our second crop and planning to plant for fall vegetables.
So what we do is at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, we have over 700 videos on how to grow food, how to can the food you grow, how to cook some of the foods you grow, some great tips for using items, all that good stuff. Then we also have a quarterly digital magazine, and that's free for you. We have, I think, 10...
8, 9, 9, not 9 just came out. 9th one.
I think this is 10. This is because we have the tomato special one. And that's on our website as well, under the magazine tab. And these are full-color digital magazines, and Joey and I write all the articles.
As well as we have this podcast and some other things that we do on the side. Speaking appearances, if you're in the local area, that we can make an appearance at your particular event. So with that being said, it's the beginning of summer. We're just getting into the tomato planting here in the upper portions of the United States. We're in growing zone 5A, 5B. Some of you may be above us, northern of us, that are in growing zone 4, 3, 2, even 1, or 0. And those of you who are down south, you're a little farther ahead. But we want to start thinking about and talking about and planning for the second crop of some of these warm weather vegetables that we have in our garden. We'll go over some of these, and planning to plant for fall, because we can still get another basic garden season out of our garden. Now again, this is dictated on where you live, based on when you should or shouldn't plant some of these crops. Now, based on where you live, we're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is in zone, as I said, 5A, 5B, based on what map you look at. We have 156 days of frost-free, on average, frost-free growing days. Now, this is an average over the last 10 years. With that being said, we've harvested tomatoes. How far? We've harvested tomatoes into
it was like mid-November.
Into the second week of November.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've
Not every year.
Not every year. No. And also we've had things shut off about the third week in October, too. Mm-hmm. So it varies. Just to kind of give you a reference here, and I picked some dates here, and you can find this on the Farmer's Almanac, and there's other websites that are available if you search frost-free days, and you can put in your zip code. Juneau, Alaska, 148 frost-free days. Now, you would think Juneau, Alaska would just ice all year round.
Right.
But it's 148 frost-free days. Again, Milwaukee here, we're using a base there because that's where we're at, 156 days. Blair, Nebraska, 137 days. Pretty short growing season there when you compare it to some of the other numbers. Mobile, Alabama, how many days you think?
200?
274 days.
Oh, wow.
Miami, Florida, no frost at all. 365 days of growing.
Alligators may get you.
Snakes may get you, but you can grow tomatoes year round. Hawaii, the same way. Mm-hmm. Newark, New Jersey, 217 days. Tucson, Arizona, 333 days. So somewhere in there they have a little frost. Let's see what other things. Sparta, Wisconsin, 133 days. Green Bay, Wisconsin, 150 days.
Tucson has what now?
Tucson is 333 frost-free growing days. So they have about 20 days there that things get a little bad, I guess, based on the sources I see. The shortest one that I have found, and I looked on 2 different references, was Duluth, Minnesota, 122 days. That's like 4 months. That's it. That's all you get. Now, obviously, these numbers are an average, so Duluth may only get maybe 100 days some years and maybe get 150 days other years. But you can see that the importance, what I'm trying to stress here, is the importance of planning, knowing when things go in the ground, knowing how long they take to grow, knowing when to rotate stuff out, and when to rotate stuff in. Perfect example about our garlic. Explain our situation with our garlic. Typically, when we harvest it, and why are we doing it different this year?
So typically we harvest it end of June, early July, kind of right before July. And so this year we're harvesting it probably about 2 weeks early. And the reason why is because we're going to put a crop in behind it. We're going to put in some potatoes and tomatoes, right? What else? That's
all. That's all the
right?
space we have. So typically, we'd let it sit for another 3 weeks, roughly 3, maybe.
But it's looking good.
Yeah. And the thought process is, you harvest your garlic when the bottom leaves, two sets or the first set of leaves, second set of leaves die back. You harvest it. Well, we've got about 1 set of leaves that are dying back, and by the time we harvest it, we maybe have 2 set of leaves. The thinking process, we've done some test harvest. And based, some's growing in the shade, some's growing in the full sun. They're good sized bulbs. There's nothing to be ashamed of what we're harvesting. Now we could, in years past, like we have, let it sit there for another 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, and acquire a little more growth on these. So we kind of did some just magical math, I guess is what we'll call this. We've got 75 bulbs in the ground. Mm-hmm. So let's say we let those 75 bulbs sit in the ground for another 3 weeks. Out of those 75 bulbs, the weight increases by, let's say, 2 pounds. Let's pick a number, 2 pounds. Okay, that's great. But if we pull those bulbs out now and not acquire that 2 extra pounds over 75 bulbs, so you're talking maybe ounces per bulb that you would gain.
Less than that.
By the time you...
Plus, we planted a lot of garlic.
Well, we planted far too much, and we're going to cut back. But instead of waiting for those 2 pounds of garlic, or that 2 extra pounds to acquire on the garlic bulb, pull them out now, put potatoes in behind them, put another 18 tomato, put 26 more potato plants in, put another 18 tomato plants in, and instead of getting 2 pounds over the next 3 weeks, we'll end up getting literally hundreds of pounds, dozens of pounds of potatoes and tomatoes in the same place where that garlic would sit for another 3 weeks. So think about that. So there's other things that we can plant for a second planting in the summer. Bush beans.
Yeah.
Pole beans will stay all the way to frost. Bush beans take about 40, 60 days, and they're done. So you can get another crop in on top of that.
And then beets?
Beets are another great one.
Rutabagas.
Rutabagas is a fall. We'll talk about that. Some people plant it in the spring. We have horrible results when we try to plant rutabagas and turnips in the spring. Just something that happened. Mm-hmm. Works great in the fall. Another one would be
carrots.
Carrots is another one. That's a good one.
Corn.
Now, corn is a little fidgety because based on the variety of corn, some corn takes 62 days. Some corn takes 95 days. Mm-hmm. So let's just do a little math here. Let's say and we're going to base it here, our average first frost is October 18th. Mm-hmm. Corn doesn't do good at frost. Frost kills corn, no matter how light of a frost there is. So if we backdate it, October 18th, September 18th, August 18th, July 18th. July 18th is about the maximum of the latest we could get another crop in, because that's 90 days. And if we plant a crop of corn that's maybe a 75-day harvest rate, we're okay. Now, if we start planting with 90 days to our average first frost, and the corn takes 95 days, it's not looking good. You're going to kind of risk it heavily there. So that's something else you want to look at when it comes to planting a second crop.
Summer squash?
Summer squash takes about 65, 70 days.
Oh, yeah.
That's your green zucchini, your yellow crookneck zucchini. And the advantages of planting it later on in the summer, you don't have to worry about the squash vine growing.
Oh, yeah.
Those have already laid their eggs and hatched and morphed and done all that. So that's something you keep in mind. And if you're having problems, you might want to plant that a little later in the season. So with that being said, just think about where you're at. If you're in Miami, Florida, this really doesn't apply to you because you can plant year-round. But if you're in Bismarck, or if you're in Blair, Nebraska, or Juneau, or Milwaukee, or et cetera, you want to think about this stuff and put it in a notebook, put it on a calendar, because if you're growing a garden, many of you are growing it not because it's because your neighbors are doing it, or because you feel it's something that somebody's expecting you to do. You're doing it for what? Why is most of the listeners growing a garden?
For themselves.
For themselves.
Yeah.
So you want to get the maximum.
Some people donate or share or whatever their extra harvest, but most of the time, especially if you're growing it in a small space, you're growing it for yourself, so you can have the healthy food.
And you're wanting to get as much out of it as possible. Mm-hmm. So by pulling stuff early, planting it, starting in pots even in the summer to get it in the ground. For example, you talked about the summer squash. Summer squash takes about 75 days. You can start that in a pot or a container early. You can start it 2 weeks early before you plant it in the ground. So you can start it on your porch and a little, transplant. Right. And you can get a 2-week jump on that. So instead of, it's already established a little quicker. So you can kind of think about that. Seed starting doesn't always have to happen January through March. It can happen at any time of the year. So let's talk about now some of the fall things that we can plant when it comes to growing stuff in the fall for our fall garden.
So you want the cooler weather crops.
Right.
So you can do stuff like cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale.
Radishes would be another one.
Radishes, lettuce.
Lettuce is another good one. And now some of these...
the rutabaga.
Rutabagas and turnips. Now some of these can handle a frost. Kale can handle a frost. Now the thing you want to keep in mind here is you want to get these plants established. You don't want to start your seedlings with a frost on top of them. You want to get these started back far enough. Let's go with our standard here for us. October 18th, average first frost. So let's say cabbage takes 70 days to reach maturity. So you want to plant that cabbage. You could let that cabbage grow beyond October 18th, but you want that cabbage to be in the later portions of forming and ready to harvest, probably November 1st at the latest. Mm-hmm. So you can plant that. They'll handle this cold weather. Turnips and rutabagas is a good example here. Rutabagas take 90 days. Turnips take 60 days to reach maturity. So we look on our calendar. 90 days to our average first frost is July 18th. Obviously, we don't want to do that because that's the heart of the summer. Mm-hmm. You can get away with planting rutabagas and turnips about August 1st, second week in August, and harvest them last week October, a little bit into November, and be perfectly fine. Some of these crops thrive when the nighttime temperatures get cooler and the daytime temperatures are warm. That's just the way nature has designed these crops to do. Garlic is another wonderful crop that only can really be grown. I mean, there's some springtime garlic, but for the most best success, plant it in the fall, harvest it in, as we're talking about, June, July, based on your growing area. And again, your growing area, if you're new to gardening, if you're intermediate to gardening, even if you're an expert at gardening, it's always good to refresh on these things, read up on these things, remind yourself that, just because you've been doing this a certain way for X amount of years, as we have with the garlic, harvesting it in late June, early July, it can change. You can change. It's not going to hurt the ecosystem of your garden if you harvest your garlic 3 weeks earlier than you ever have before, because you've got extra potatoes or tomatoes or squash to go in behind it. That's many times what big ag industry, the big farmers do. They harvest this stuff, and within 24 hours, or even as the combine's going through the field, they've got somebody else behind them planting another crop to get as much out of the ground as possible. Same kind of concept here. So with that being said, think about what you're planting now. Think what you can plant again during the summer to get another warm crop out of it, as well as planning to plant for the fall. Coming up after the break, Mike Novak will be with us with his regular appearance on the program, as well as your questions and our answers.
If you could double the life of your raised bed boxes by sealing the wood with a non-toxic wood preservative, would you? Well, now you can with a clear, penetrating product called Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's 100% non-toxic and easy to apply. Seal your bare, untreated wood surfaces, even chicken coops, by spraying Internal Wood Stabilizer. It's invisible, seals the wood from the inside out, and never wears off. Recommended by organic gardening experts. Internal Wood Stabilizer. Check it out at timberprocoatings.com.
A gardener knows that the key to a good plant is its roots. With poor roots, the end result is not good. Conventional pots and trays cause roots to wrap around and become root bound. Then you try to unwrap the roots at the time of planting, hoping not to break them. But never again with the Root Maker, a non-chemical innovation that naturally air prunes roots to create more vigorous roots. Never a root bound plant again. Whether trees, flowers, or edibles, home garden or commercial grower, more roots means healthier, more productive plants. To get your own, visit rootmaker.com.
Oh, yeah. What you say? You say Nasala Kombucha. It'll put some glide in your stride and some pep in your step. Nasala Kombucha. Yeah.
Nasala Kombucha makes your body happy. Nasala Kombucha makes your body smile.
Now back to two gardeners that know a little bit about what burns in their mouth.
And you don't want to use your, organic mouthwash. You want to use something that's got the ethanol, the alcohol in it.
The bad stuff.
Yeah. The stuff that'll burn if you leave it in the oil for too long.
Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the program. If you want to go ahead and check out our sponsors, you can visit the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, or you can click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. Please feel free to support them as they support us.
Each program, our good friend from Q4 Radio, Mr. Mike Novak, joins us with his environmental report. And if you're going to miss an environmental report, this is not the environmental report to miss this week about the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. If you're unfamiliar with what those terms mean, Mike will tell you exactly what that is. And here is Mike Novak.
And now to a man who's not afraid to tell you what you need to do to keep the planet he lives on clean.
Take your food scraps out to your compost pile. Screw in a compact fluorescent light bulb. Turn on a window fan instead of an air conditioner. Low flow, baby. Shower heads and toilets. Take one napkin at Starbucks instead of 6.
Mike Novak.
Welcome to another installment of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Environmental Report. I'm Mike Novak, and you can hear me live each Sunday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Central Time on Q4 Radio, which streams at www.QUE4.org and on the Q4 Radio Facebook page. You can also get my podcasts at mikenovak.net, MikeNowak. I might be going out on a limb here, but I'm guessing that you listen to or watch the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener on a regular basis because you want to learn how to grow vegetables, fruits, and stuff. And because Joey and Holly are smart and they care, and they're going to teach you how to do it right. Oh, and by the way, I interviewed them on June 5th on my own show. You can find that interview on the homepage of MikeNovak.net. That's what we in the media biz call a cross plug. But getting back to why you want to grow your own food, well, frankly, one of the reasons is that if you're growing it, you know what's on it, meaning pesticides. Meaning that if you don't know who grew it, you don't know what they did to it, unless you trust the grower. Which brings us to the Environmental Working Group's annual list of the Dirty Dozen, the 12 types of conventionally grown produce that are most likely to be contaminated by pesticides. Now, before you start accusing those crazy organic types with manufacturing numbers to make the produce industry look bad, you should know that the EWG's Shopper's Guide to Pesticides in Produce got its numbers from our very own USDA, which tested nearly 7,000 produce samples in 2014. Of that group, almost 75% tested positive for pesticides, 146 different pesticides, to be precise. I know, you're going to say, but I always wash my produce. Well, that's not going to help in this case. The data used to create the Shopper's Guide are from produce tested as it is typically eaten. This means washed and or peeled. So what that means is that if you don't wash that conventional produce, you're going to be sucking up even more pesticides. So let's get to the list. Here's the Dirty Dozen with the worst coming last. Let's see if you can guess who wins the prize. Ready? Number 12, cucumbers. Number 11, cherry tomatoes. Then the top 10 are sweet bell peppers, tomatoes, spinach, cherries, grapes, celery, peaches, nectarines, apples, and the number one pesticide-laden crop, strawberries. Did you get it right? I did, because strawberries are always at the top of the list, which is a good reason to grow them in your own backyard. Now, does the EWG want you to stop eating those fruits and vegetables? Au contraire, mes amis. They say that even with pesticide residues, you're better off eating items from that list than most of the garbage Americans consume every day. Keep eating your fruits and vegetables. By the way, for more information on the study, go to ewg.org. The question here is how much residue is actually on those plants, and how much does it take to cause physiological damage to humans? That's where the real debate starts. Some groups claim that all of these products meet EPA standards, but as EWG points out, legal isn't always safe. The U.S. EPA operates on something called tolerances. Are those tolerances set for children? Good question. Glad I asked it. By the way, the EWG also announced its Clean 15 list of produce least likely to hold pesticide residues. That list goes like this: avocados, sweet corn, pineapples, cabbage, frozen sweet peas, onions, asparagus, mangoes, papayas, kiwis, eggplant, honeydew melon, grapefruit, cantaloupe, and cauliflower. Dig in. Relatively few pesticides were detected on these foods, and tests found low concentrations of pesticides on them. And as you might have noticed, there are several that you're not going to grow in Wisconsin, or Illinois, or Iowa. One more thing. For the fourth year, EWG has included a Dirty Dozen Plus category to highlight two types of food that contain trace levels of highly hazardous pesticides. As they write, quote, leafy greens, kale and collard greens, and hot peppers do not meet traditional Dirty Dozen ranking criteria, but were frequently found to be contaminated with insecticides toxic to the human nervous system. EWG recommends that people who eat a lot of these foods buy organic instead. End quote. It's a good thing that kale is easy to grow, and as I've learned from experience, nobody but nobody ever steals kale. Which takes us back to my original statement today. There's a reason that you listen to this podcast. Growing your own food is important in so many ways. Pesticide use is just one of them. You can control that if you grow your own. And one of the best ways to do that is to keep listening to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener. That's the state of the environment today. I hope you catch the Mike Novak Show on Q4 Radio, q4.org, which you can always link to at my website, mikenovak.net. Go green or go home.
So those kind words that Mike had about us, and about you guys who are listening to us, we appreciate all of that, as well as maybe we should pay a little more attention about the food that we buy and the food that we grow in our garden based on the chemicals and toxicity that they may have. Now, we may already be poisoned at this point, but
we might be walking pesticides. Here comes... Actually, there was that study that people removed, I don't know what it was, they removed they replaced all the food in the house of the family with organic food, and for 2 weeks, that's all they ate was organics, and they tested their urine and their blood, and most of the pesticides were removed.
Well, there you go.
So you can change it.
So, with now comes the time of the show where your questions, and we give you our answers, and if you don't like our answers, you shouldn't ask the question. So we got 3 questions this week, and Holly, you've got the first question.
Sure.
And what is that regarding?
About the asparagus beetle. So our friend here wants to know how you can get rid of the asparagus beetle organically.
Well, first of all, I didn't even know we had such a thing.
No, I didn't know either, and that was interesting to find out. So asparagus beetle, it looks like a beetle. It's about 1/4 inch in length, and it nibbles on the asparagus plants, and then it sucks the life out of it, kind of. And
so it's kind of like a tick, but it also chews on the plant as well. It sucks the juices out.
You can see bites in it. And so if you're trying to eat the asparagus, I guess it's not very appetizing.
But it doesn't hurt. I mean, you can eat it after it's been nibbled, but you'd prefer to have clean, untainted.
Right.
Okay. So how can we address this? Most asparagus has been harvested this year, but maybe you've seen this on your asparagus, this nibbling, and was unsure of what it might have been, and this might be the problem that is persisting in your garden.
Sure. So what you can do is... since it's kind of late in the year this year, one thing you can do now is you can make sure you remove all of the fronds, all the asparagus. Make sure it's all removed. And then you can make sure you do that before winter. Just make sure it's all removed.
But let the fronds grow up this year until fall to feed the roots.
Yeah.
And then cut it clean right before winter comes. Okay.
Don't leave any of them.
Okay.
Then in the spring, when you first start to see them poke through the soil, then you start to spray it with neem oil.
Now, not just any neem oil.
No.
Okay, because you can go to the store and buy neem oil, but you're getting garbage, because if you don't get the right kind of neem oil, you're spending money that is going to do nothing for the effects that you want to have on it.
Right. So what you want is... And I know I've seen this at our organic food store. They have the neem oil there. I'm sure you can order it online. But it's 100% cold press.
Cold press is the key here.
Is what you want. And it has what's called azadirachtin in it. There's nothing removed from it. So this is 100% cold pressed. And you want that. You want to make sure you have that. Because if you go to the garden center, they might have it the good stuff removed, and then you're just spraying
the normal
oil.
stuff is the oil that has been removed. They leave the neem, but they remove the oil, which is the acting factor in the repelling of the insects.
Right.
Okay, so 100% cold press is what you need to see on the label. If you don't see that, you're getting gypped. Okay, so that's how you fix asparagus beetles. What is our next question in regards to?
So okay, our friend here, she wanted to know how often to water, how wet do you want it? And that's good. That's a good question, especially I know here, obviously we're getting a lot of rain.
Texas is getting a lot of rain.
A lot of people are getting a lot of rain. So
there's a lot of rain, and there's too much rain, and there's not enough rain. Right. So there you go.
So this is a very good question to ask, and it depends. You gotta kind of watch it. We're obviously not watering right now.
Well, I mean, it depends on one. Obviously, we can't control the rain. You never want to cover the garden and prevent water from absorbing into the soil. Don't do that. That's a horrible idea. It's a waste of time. Also, it depends on the type of soil you have. If you have clay soil that's going to be a sponge, it's just going to sit there. That's bad too. You really want to wait on watering. If you have sandy soil, watering is much more persistent. You want to do it much more often. If you have a good organic based. A good mixture, like a raised bed that you fill with good compost. Soil compost is an organic material that absorbs the water it needs, releases the water it doesn't, and kind of holds on to it for a period and then allows it to evaporate. It's just the magic of nature of compost, so you want to keep that in mind as well.
Right.
So, what would you say to the answer to this question?
I would just, at this point, especially with the varied rain we're getting, I would just check my soil. If it looks dry, then I would water it.
Well, don't look at...
I would check underneath.
Yeah, go about 3 or 4 inches down with a shovel, right?
Yeah,
okay.
And then check to see how dry it is. If it's dry 3 to 4 inches down, then you bet I'll be watering. If it's not, then I'm just going to keep track of it.
So it varies from every garden. Again, don't just look at appearances. And again, our garden is covered with mulch, so we'd have to remove the mulch. Also, that helps retain moisture.
Right.
But you just don't look at appearances going, well, the top looks dry, so I better water. Well, the top is dry, and you go an inch deep, and it's just sobby wet because it's crusted over.
And we discovered that we were cleaning that one bed, and we were trying to pull the weeds, and everything was all clumpy because it was so wet. Because that mulch helped retain that water.
Yeah, so we had to remove the mulch and let it dry for about 3 days, and the soil was able to be worked.
Yeah.
So you never want to work wet soil. That's another thing. All right, our final question comes to us via our Facebook page. Our Facebook page is, how does people find our Facebook page?
All you do is just go to Facebook, and you just type in the little search bar, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, and you will be able to find us.
It's pretty easy. There's our pictures there.
Yeah, a picture of Joey and I. And we had a question about this. Is it a fungus or a mold? What is it?
Well, it was an image that was shared to us.
Yeah, a friend shared it.
And we're going to describe, and if you want to go over there, you can just scroll down the timeline and find this, or you can look in the photos. It is a picture of a container that it appears to be a pepper in it, on top of wood mulch. And there is this big pile of white, it looks like foam insulation, the kind that gets in the can that you spray and it expands. Well, this individual was concerned of what this might be. Now, I had seen this before in other pictures, never put any more thought to it. And I shared this on the Facebook page to ask anybody who may know the answer to this. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't. I did some research, and it's better to go to this, the people. People know the answer, rather than us trying to find it on our own and spend time and maybe get inaccurate information based on where we're finding it. So
Kirsty W.
Shared this information, and you can look at this picture, but read what she has wrote and what this may be, or what this is.
Okay, so she said, since it is on the mulch, it looks like a mold fungus that is called dog puke slime mold.
If you Google that, it will show you, and you go Google image, it will show you that.
Yeah, and it looks just like this. It's called Fugel septica. It's totally harmless, but it does grow on mulch or other decaying wood and plant material. And it can just appear overnight, especially if it has been rainy and warm. So it's, like we know, it's been rainy and warm here. So that's not surprising. And so it's harmless, which is good. But
it'll scare you because you don't know what it is.
Yeah, that would probably kind of frighten me. It's like, what happened here? So
don't breathe it in. If you kick it, it releases. It's like a powder. Mm-hmm. Don't breathe it in, or go ahead.
So
and it can disappear very rapidly as well.
Yeah.
So that if you have a
must be some sort of ecosystem going on.
If you have mulch and you have a white, moldy-looking insulation, foamy stuff looking, that's what it is. It's dog puke is what it's called.
So and you're more than welcome if you guys have any questions. You can email us, or you can come to our Facebook page, or you can tweet us, and we'd be happy to answer your questions.
So we learned 2 things today. I learned asparagus beetles exist, and dog puke fungus. Yeah. So that's 2 things that, because of you asking the questions, we were able to be educated a little bit more of what we do. So we appreciate that. Again, if you have questions, send it through the Facebook page, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, or the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener on Facebook, or you can go to our website, click on the red button that says question on the right-hand side of the page, and you can submit the question there. We'll answer it personally in an email to you, as well as address it on the program for others around the world who may have that same question. Coming up next, author and blogger from the great state of Oklahoma, Dee Nash. Dee Nash will be with us right after this.
At dollarseed.com, all of our seeds are only $1 a pack. And we have online resources that teach you all about the rewarding hobby of growing your own plants, flowers, herbs, and vegetables. Imagine the joy you'll feel when your children actually help you harvest your first garden crop, or the pride of knowing you'll never need a florist again. Visit dollarseed.com and grow a little magic of your own for just $1. Dollarseed.com. What could be healthier?
Water is our most important resource. The key is to capture the rain that falls on your property. No need for bulky rain barrels that are hard to handle and just don't fit in. Rain Reserve has solved the problem for you with their multi-size and color cube-like units, a rain barrel that does not look like one. Capturing rain easy, going unnoticed by passerby, and blending into the surrounding. Construction so easy, even children can put it together. To get your Rain Reserve, visit rainreserve.com and use coupon code RAIN2016 to save 10% on total purchase. No gardener wants to walk through a garden with dull, droopy flowers. You want your flowers to be big, bright, and beautiful. With age-old Bloom, you can have flowers that will achieve this. Bloom supplies flowers with a high level of phosphorus and encourages flowers to bloom big, bright, and beautiful. Visit ageold.com for more information on age-old products, Bloom, and our suppliers.
Hey, this is Craig.
And this is Larry.
From the Urban Farm and Garden Show. And when I'm not in the barn shoveling,
And I'm not out in the garden digging up carrots.
we're listening to Joey and Holly Baird from the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener.
Welcome back to the program. If you want to find out more information about all the sponsors you've just heard and our entire sponsor lineup, you can check them out at our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, as well as the show notes for this podcast. Support them because they support us. Well, Holly, let's go to the TWVG hotline and bring in our next guest. We're going to go to Oklahoma for that.
Yeah, so Dee Nash, she was born and raised in Oklahoma. She's a freelance writer who lives with her husband, kids, 2 dogs, several cats and chickens on 7.5 acres, smack dab in the middle of the Great American Prairie. Her website, which is reddirtramblings.com, is loaded with tons of gardening information. She is the author of the 20-30-something Garden Guide, a no-fuss, down and dirty gardening 101 for anyone who wants to grow stuff. And she recently won the 2015 Blogger to Watch from Southern Living. Welcome to the program, Dee Nash.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're always excited to have different gardeners from different regions of the country. We're listened to by individuals all over the country and all over the world, so it's nice to get a different perspective on gardening in your little neck of the woods, and we thank you for that.
Oh, sure. Anytime.
So we always are inquiring and interested in how individuals got started in gardening. How did you get started? Was it something you picked up as a child, or did you catch this later on in life?
I followed my grandmother behind her as she gardened. She was an amazing gardener that lived in northeastern Oklahoma, up by Missouri. And I just remember loving being with her. And so I think I always associated gardening with her. But I didn't really have anywhere to grow. My parents lived in the city, and that was before urban gardening was real popular. So I did houseplants for a long time, and then I didn't really start growing until I had my own place. And I started with 3 rose bushes and some begonias, and that's how I got started.
Now we want to talk about soil. As you mentioned, you are from Oklahoma. Oklahoma is not known for the world's best soil. How do you build your soil for your vegetables and the perennial beds?
Okay, well, yeah, we're known for really bad soil. We have red soil, so we have all that iron that's trapped in the soil, but it's trapped in clay and sand. And I'm fortunate because I live east of I-35, which runs the center corridor of the United States, and so I have sandier soil, so I'm lucky there. At least I don't have clay. But I use lots of things to amend my soil, but especially the shredded leaves on my property. We have a bunch of oak trees because I live in a wooded area, and so we gather those up and shred them every year, and I use them as mulch, and I keep working them into the soil. And after living here for 27 years, I have really good soil. So, but I always say to my friends and gardeners that want to, people who want to garden, especially in difficult places, there is no shame in buying good soil.
No
shame.
And I think that, many people, and I'm going to put new gardeners as well as advanced gardeners, we think that we have to go buy it when, in your instance, you were able to get leaves that were on the property and utilize that. Yeah, we never can make enough compost, but we need to utilize what we have available and start from there.
Sure, if you treat your soil just like Mother Nature treats it, and think about the fact of what happens in a forest, you can do very similar things. And if you have animals around, you can use manure, especially aged manure, and we have chickens, so I have plenty of manure on the property too. And chicken manure, once it's sat for 6 months, it's great stuff. And horse manure is good. Use what you have. That makes it a lot cheaper.
Now, I want to talk about roses with you. At one point, you love roses, and you had over 100 roses. You've lost many of them to disease, almost all of them now. But what are some things that individuals need to know about roses before we just go to our local garden center or on the website and just start clicking and buy? And what were some of the diseases that roses get that maybe we can prevent them from getting?
Okay, well, first let me explain. The disease that I lost a lot of my roses to is called rosette disease, and it's actually a virus that runs intrinsically through the stems of the rose and into the roots, and so it's not anything that you can prevent or spray or anything else. It comes from an endoscopic mite, and I don't think you guys have that up in Wisconsin, do you?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm sure in time it
will.
No,
you would be aware, so I'm sure you guys don't have it yet, and I'm really glad for you because it's the pits. It started on the East Coast, and it moved across the country, and now Oklahoma has it really bad, and so do parts of Texas. And I've heard it's a little bit in Arkansas now. So it's a huge, huge problem. In fact, they call it AIDS for roses. So first of all, I would say, wherever you grow, make sure that rosette disease hasn't come into your state yet and isn't a problem. And if it isn't a problem, then, you just face the regular rose diseases that are like black spot and rust and powdery mildew, just the normal things. And most of those can be even controlled organically if you'll just be really patient and amend your soil really well and take care of it. For thinking about what to buy ahead of time, always like with any plant, the root system is really the key. And roses are either grown on their own roots or they're grafted. And either way, you want a really good root system. So if I were ordering roses from out of state, I would make sure to order them from a place that doesn't have rosette disease. And I would also order them from a very rare, and there's some great rose nurseries all over the country. But you can also go to your local nursery and buy them too. And then look for a really healthy foliage. Those are the two things that roses have trouble with, and they like lots of food. So they have to have very, very good soil in which to produce all those beautiful blooms.
Now, with this rose disease that you acquired, is there roses out there or have they hybridized roses that will resist this, or is this is a relatively new problem?
Not yet. Rosette disease is a huge problem, and it's a problem because it's actually a virus, not a disease, and it came about because of Rosa multiflora. Rosa multiflora is a Japanese rose that was brought over by farmers to make hedgerows for their property, in windbreak.
Right.
And unfortunately, it carries that disease. So those mites, and it may not happen in Wisconsin because you guys have such cold weather in the winter. I don't know how far north the mites will go, but anyway, I know they go as far as Connecticut and Vermont, because they have it in Connecticut. But that particular disease, they're working very hard on it. There's several universities. They're trying to figure out a way to breed more resistance into roses. But right now, all roses are susceptible. However, I still have roses in my garden that haven't gotten it yet. And so some roses are less susceptible, it seems. And, good air circulation. The mites they're wingless. They just jump. But they can be carried on the wind. And I live in a very windy state, which is probably why it's spread here so fast. It's a disaster. I mean, I don't mean to be negative, but it's been a disaster. 2 very historic rose gardens in Oklahoma have removed all of their roses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They're now color gardens. Yeah, it is kind of sad, but you know what? I've got a good attitude about it, and I've replaced a lot of my roses with native plants, so I'm okay with it. I still have some beautiful roses, and it's going to be all right.
All right. So you are gluten and dairy free. For people who are new to this concept, what is gluten and why do you feel it's bad? And what has been the hardest part about becoming gluten and dairy-free?
Okay, gluten is the protein in wheat, and the thing that I'm also allergic to in dairy is the protein called casein. So those two things are very close and biologically, and they affect my system the same way. And the reason that it's bad for me, I was tested in 2007, and so they found out that I had a problem with both gluten and dairy. And so I've been off of it since 2007. And why is it bad? Well, it not only causes me terrible digestive distress, it also was affecting my joints, and I was getting to where I didn't have the strength to hold a trowel. For a gardener, that's a disaster. So, once I got off of both of those and started to take good care of myself and eat different things, then I began to feel better. And what's the hardest part about it? I would say the hardest part is, especially when I first started, was eating out, because so many restaurants didn't know about it. But now, it's pretty common, and so it's not as hard as it used to be.
Right.
But I don't find it hard not to eat wheat.
I see. Now, you recently wrote your first book, and congratulations on that, because I think we all have a book inside of it.
Thank you.
We all have a book inside of us. It's just getting it to, a printing status. Now, your book is entitled The 20-30-something Gardening Guide, a no-fuss, down-and-dirty gardening 101 for everyone who wants to grow something. Where did the inspiration of this book come from, and who was you actually targeting when you were writing this book?
Okay, my inspiration came from my children. I have children that are ages 38. She's my bonus daughter. I'm 53. And then I have a child that's 22 and one that's 21 and one that's almost 17. I was having to add their ages up again because they're just all turning older. I noticed, we live out in the country, and I noticed that when their friends came over, they didn't know anything about gardening. And not only that, they loved the chickens, and they loved being in the garden. And my kids understood how to do a lot of it. I taught them. And I just noticed that millennials, I knew that millennials, the 20, 30-somethings, were growing up, and they wanted to garden, but they didn't feel like they had the skill set. And, gardening is just all about learning a skill, just like sewing or cooking or any kind of other thing, and I wanted to help them. And that's where the inspiration came from. And the target group is it's the 20, 30-somethings or the millennials, but at the same time, it says for anyone who wants to grow something. So anybody who's new to gardening, that's my targeted audience, because I wanted to help them. I've gardened since I was 19 years old, and I've learned a lot, and I wanted to pass on that knowledge in a really unthreatening way.
And this is not, for our listeners, this is not just another book, not another novel. There's pictures, you go through step-by-step procedures and a lot of the gardening practices, and you break it down and make it very simple for everybody to understand.
Well, thank you. I certainly tried to. I wanted it to be simple because I think while gardening is a skill that has to be learned, you can take it step by step. And I took most of the pictures in the book, and we had a great time working on it and creating more things for the garden, and building cold frames, stuff like that. It was a blast. I enjoyed doing it.
Now, for people who are wanting to put a book together, and I know there's many listeners, we've talked about it ourselves, from the time you said, hey, I'm going to write a book, to the time you actually had that book in your hand going, oh my goodness, I wrote a book. What was that time frame?
Oh, that's funny. Well, I thought about the book for about 2 years. And then I went to a publisher in, I'm trying to think of what month it was. I went to a publisher in May. And remember, I write all the time. I mean, that's my job. So I'm always writing about gardening all the time. So that helped. And I always am taking pictures. So I already had a lot of pictures made. And then some of the projects we had to do and then take pictures of that. But I'm always doing stuff and always writing. So that helped, too, because I write on deadline all the time. So I think I told him about the idea and signed the contract in May. And we were doing PDF proofs of the book on December 24th. And I know that because I was making fudge in my kitchen, and my editor called me and wanted to go over some changes. And I said, just let me get this fudge in the pan, and I will, we'll go over there and work on the PDF. And so then the book was in my hands in February.
Okay.
So it took less than a year, but I think it's because I had prepared for it for 2 years.
All right. Now, what are some easy vegetables that can be grown in Oklahoma and most parts of the country that you would, probably recommend to millennials or people that are getting started in gardening?
Well, some easy vegetables. Well, I think really easy vegetables, I think peas are easy, especially where I live. Shelling peas aren't as easy as sweet peas or sugar snap type peas. Those are easier. Most, like, turnips are easy. I'm trying to think of cold weather stuff. Lettuce is easy. Spinach. All of the greens are pretty easy vegetables in the world to grow in a cool garden of fall or a spring garden or even over winter in cold frames where I live is bok choy. Have you guys ever grown bok choy?
Yes, we have.
Yeah, bok choy is delicious, and it's not hard to grow. In fact, we've gotten several freezes, really hard ones, and we've had 2 different snowstorms, and I still have bok choy out in the garden that's producing like crazy, and I bring it in and, eat more of it. So it's delicious and easy. I think most greens are easy. And then in the summer, I don't think tomatoes are that easy to grow, even in the South, because sometimes they burn up. But, everybody wants to grow a tomato. So you have to work really hard to prepare your soil and plant that tomato really deep. For summer vegetables, they're easy. Bush beans. I think bush beans are the easiest thing in the world to grow. Here, I don't know if squash is hard to grow where you guys live, but here it gets eaten up by squash bugs. But if you don't have the squash bug problem, it's pretty easy. So those are some of the ones I think are easier. Cucumbers, they're pretty easy. So do you have a vegetable that you guys find hard to grow?
Broccoli and cauliflower. We've tried to grow it for 6 years. We're not going to waste the space this year. We're going to put something in there in the garden in that space that we know we can produce. And we'll
yeah, it is kind of hard.
Yeah.
I think broccoli flowers before it ever makes a real head. And cauliflower is even harder because you got to cover it up so that you can get that head to be white or whatever color of cauliflower you're growing. There's so many colors to grow now. But, for the space it takes, I think it's really kind of hard to grow. What's hard for me is watermelon.
Right, okay.
For the life of me, I cannot grow watermelon. I've tried and tried and tried, and I was just honest about it in the book. We all want to grow things, and sometimes those things don't work. So I can buy watermelon and buy good watermelon here in the summer.
Right.
And that's okay.
And you bring up the point of the broccoli, the cauliflower. For the amount of space that it takes up in the garden, you can go to your local farmer's market and buy the equivalent of what you would have grown for about $6, and you can grow something else that you know you can produce.
Exactly. And if you grow tomatoes, they bear, determinate ones bear all in like a big 3-week period, and then you have to can them. But, tomatoes that are indeterminate, you can have tomatoes all season long. And so that's a good vegetable for its space limitations. Watermelon's the same way. Pumpkins are the same way. I just buy them from my local farmers.
Right.
That way I support the farmers, too.
Exactly. Well, Dee, we greatly appreciate your time being on the program, taking time out of your day to share your knowledge with us. For people who want to venture out and get that book of yours, where is the best place or places that they can purchase the book from?
Probably the easiest place to purchase it from is Amazon. Everybody can buy from Amazon so easily. You can just search my name or search the title. If they want to buy it from me personally and have it signed, they can just send an email to nashgarden@gmail.com, and then I'll make arrangements with them to get them the book. I did that for a lot of people for Christmas. And it makes a great wedding gift for people with, like tools in a basket. I have a lot of people buying it as a wedding gift. So that'll be good for June. Huh?
Yeah, and we'll have all of those links in the show notes for this podcast. Again, Dee, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
And we'll be right back after this.
Do you want your next raised beds to be easy, functional, and beautiful? The Embrace helps you create the garden you've always wanted. Finally, raised beds that everyone can assemble and enjoy. No tools needed. Just slide any lumber into the Embrace corner, fill with your favorite soil mix, and you're ready to plant. Made from 100% recycled steel right here in the USA. And a portion of every sale helps to build school and community gardens all across the country. Let the Embrace help you create your next raised bed. Grow beautifully with the Embrace. Available at local garden centers and online at artofthegarden.net.
Looking for a fast-acting, non-toxic weed killer for your organic garden? One that works in cool and cloudy conditions as low as 40 degrees and is highly biodegradable with visible results in less than 2 hours? Then look no more. Avenger Weed Killer has it all and more. Made from oranges, Avenger is highly effective, easy to use, and has a pleasant citrus aroma. It is OMRI listed and approved for organic gardeners under the USDA's National Organic Program. Avenger Weed Killer is a choice for organic gardeners and homeowners who are looking for an effective, safe way to control unwanted weeds. Available in ready-to-use sprays and concentrate, ask your local lawn and garden supplier for Avenger Weed Killer. For more information and a list of suppliers, visit AvengerOrganics.com. Avenger Weed Killer, eco-friendly, deadly to weeds.
It's all about the soil at ManureT.com. With their grass-fed, antibiotic, and growth hormone-free cattle and horses, owner Annie Haven puts the quality in her premium soil conditioner. 100% organic and natural, whether feeding your flowers or veggies, indoors or out, you can grow organically with confidence. To purchase authentic Haven brand Manure Tea, small orders or large, go to ManureT.com. Always free shipping.
Hey everybody, this is Jared from PermaSapien.com, and I am all about employing permaculture wisely. Right now, you are listening to Joey and Holly Baird on the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast.
Welcome back to the program. If you want to find out more about our sponsors, just visit the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com. Click on the podcast tab at the top of the page. Please feel free to support them as they support us.
Well, before we get out of here today, we've got one more task to achieve, and that is Gardening in 2 Minutes. Gardening in 2 Minutes is an audio production that Holly and I produce on a weekly basis for a few radio programs and a number of podcasts. If you'd like Gardening in 2 Minutes on your particular program, contact us through the website. This Gardening in 2 Minutes is all about
growing cucumbers.
And here is Gardening in 2 Minutes. This is Gardening in 2 Minutes. In most growing zones, you'll be able to grow 2 crops of cucumbers, an early crop and a later crop. With growing cucumbers, there are many different varieties that you can choose from, and it really depends on what your intentions are for the growing of them.
You can grow a pickling cucumber, then there's a slicing or salad type cucumber, and then there's some unusual ones like lemon cucumber. Lemon cucumber is a bright yellow cucumber, like the size of a tennis ball or a lemon.
But it does not taste like a lemon, it tastes like a cucumber. Mm-hmm. You can grow these on a trellis, in a container, or let them sprawl on the ground. There are vining cucumbers, which are the most common ones, but there are new varieties out on the market that are more of a bush variety, like a summer squash that contains itself in a container or patio porch or deck, so you don't have to let them vine all over. There are some problems that you may potentially face with your cucumbers.
There's powdery mildew that you could face. There's things like lack of pollination and even pests.
Growing cucumbers can be very easily done, but the key to harvesting good and abundant amount of cucumbers is continual harvest. If you forget or leave the cucumbers on the vine to the time that they reach a mature state, the plant will begin to shut up production because it has captured all the cucumber fruit that is going to grow and mature seeds internally. You want to get them when they're very small or at a manageable size where they're not thick and woody and tough internally.
Cucumbers take about 60 to 70 days in full sun to grow and mature. So cucumbers are a great vegetable for your garden and easy to grow.
For more information on growing cucumbers, our weekly video productions, as well as our free downloadable digital quarterly magazines, you can find all that information at
the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com.
A gardener for all gardeners. For Gardening in 2 Minutes, I'm Joey Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
So if you've never grown cucumbers or you're thinking about putting them in for your second crop in a traditional ground, raised bed, or container, this might be the time to do it. Well, we appreciate you tuning into the program, and we hope you got something out of it. We obviously did with question and answer, as well as getting stuff planted for a second time for warm weather and planning to plant for fall. So let's keep that in mind and try to make the most of the garden time that we have available before that dreaded four-letter word snow comes into the forecast. The audio you've heard on the audio you've heard on the podcast is courtesy of sfx.co.uk and audioneutronics.com. Two royalty-free and copyright-free websites we use to help liven up the podcast.
Except for Nasala Kombucha and Dollar C provide their own audio.
So until next time, we appreciate you downloading the program, sharing it with your friends, and hoping that you've learned a little bit more about how to be better at gardening. I'm Joy Baird.
I'm Holly Baird.
And we will see you in the garden. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast is a production of the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for the health-conscious organic gardener worldwide, and distributed in association with WI Garden Media.